morning, everyone. Welcome again. This is our February month. We talked about the heart, we talked about Valentine's, but we cannot forget that February is dedicated to Black history in the United States of America, and there may be other places that celebrate Black History Month. But it's a major thing in the United States, and children in school focus on heroes, critical Black people who have done wonderful things in their communities, in society, and it's a time to celebrate. Some people are turned off and say, why do we only have 1 month? Well, at least we have 1 month when we highlight all the greatness. I think Black History Month is celebrated in our own homes every day. So those of you who may be thinking, why are we making a big deal about it? Because we have a moment to make a big deal about it, and we want to celebrate, congratulate, cheer, enrich all our African Americans, Caribbean Americans, anyone who is of a darker skin tone, or if you identify as African American, even if you don't have a darker skin tone, we celebrate you today. So ladies, what we're going to do this evening is I'm going to be asking you in a few minutes to name some of your Black history heroes, people that you consider great contributors to our nation who are from the African American heritage. Who would like to go first?
Last month, we highlighted Martin Luther King, and I shared what an impression Martin Luther King, made on me when I learned about Martin Luther King as a child. And so for me, he continues to be someone who really is a standout and someone from all of the peace and love and harmony and community. And that message just for me has always resonated.
Right. So that's a very rich one. MLK Day, we celebrated in January, and he has been phenomenal in the history of the African American population. I remember last year when we did some snippets from
Yes.
I Have a Dream, and I was thinking last month as we talked about him, about I've been to the mountain and I've seen the other side, and you might get there before I do. He got there before we did, and he believes that one day he drove hope that one day we all will play together, and so I believe that we have made strong progress in regards to that, and he's one of our phenomenal heroes. What about you, dear President? Any standout for you?
Going back to Martin Luther King, just look at us around the table. I'm here with my Laura, with my Laura, so his dream did not go unanswered, or his
Right.
prayers did not go unanswered, because more and more we are seeing races coming together, especially within the youth, the what they call
The
themselves,
next
the next
generation.
generation. They are not worried about the color of the skin.
Those
They
are
just-
the millennials.
The millennials.
The millennials.
They are just concerned.
And Gen Z.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Oh, yes, that's the one after the millennials.
Right.
Yeah.
They are just concerned about who the person is as an individual, as it should be. But my mom, she was my hero, because sometimes we recognize the Black History Month and we recognize the great leaders and all of that. But think about the ordinary person who may have made a difference in your life. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She raised 8 of us. And I would not have changed my mom for anything in this world.
As you shared, your mom is your hero. My mom, I feel the same way about her. She is my mentor. I think I'm so much like her, and the older I get, I see my behaviors are similar to hers. And we would encourage you all to write in the chat anybody that has influenced your life that's of the African descent, okay? The other people that jump out in my mind are Oprah Winfrey and the impact she has made on the community, the world, the entire world. I think of Bishop Desmond Tutu. I read one of his books, Made for Goodness, that we're made for goodness. So even in difficult circumstances, it calls on the deepest part of us to still bring out good, even though we would rather bring revenge or hostility. You know, Nelson Mandela, great man, great
yes.
man. These are some wonderful people. Coming to mind is First Lady Michelle Obama, you know, the first African American first lady. And of course, we let her husband join her, the great President Barack Obama. When I stop and think that my last child, who is now 17, soon to be 18, when he was born, the only president he knew was President Barack Obama. So for him to be born into a country where the first president he knows is literally African American, his dad is from Kenya, his mom is from America. He's truly an African American. And that's who my son knows. Whereas you have 80-year-olds who are saying they can't believe they have lived to see an African American in the White House. And then to hear his wife say, I am living in a house that slaves built. So these are some wonderful people that we're talking about. One of my famous comedians who is very much a part of my everyday is Steve Harvey. He had a moment when he was homeless, when he had nothing. And he tells the story how one call and he did a gig and got money to be in another place. And now he has this big empire where he influences and helps others. And then I don't want us to forget the simple everyday people, African American teachers who have invested in the lives of children. None of us would be here today without
I'm
teachers.
so glad you say that, because that's also another person that came to mind. So growing up in Miami, I went to Auburndale Elementary, and in the third grade, I mean, I had fabulous teachers, but in the third grade, Mrs. Major was the teacher that I would say at a young age had the biggest impact in my life. And it was how she carried herself. And going into that third grade, I was scared of her because all the kids said she was so strict and she was this. And I remember showing up in the third grade going, oh my gosh, what is she going to be? Guess what? She was a woman of compassion. She was a woman that really stoked the creativity in her students and really helped us expand our growth, not just in the numbers, not just in the grammar, but just in life. And I attribute a lot of my growth through my early years to what I learned from her.
Yes. Let's be grateful. Let's pause a moment and be grateful for all our teachers, and in this month for all our African American teachers. We're really proud of them and how they've contributed to our lives, and many of us wouldn't be here today without our African American educators, teachers, and here we are. The other thing I'd like to highlight, and maybe you all can help me, is the cultural food of the African American culture. Is there any particular food that you consider to be a part of their culture that you really like?
Well, last year we had, was it pickles?
Pickles. So
Pickles.
that's from our Haitian country.
Yes.
Our
I
Haitian
love
Americans. Pickles is what you eat with griot, which is typically the fried pork, and this is a part of the Haitian community. But down south in America, what's the food we eat when we think soul food?
Southern food. Well, I love Southern food, soul food.
What is it?
Grits.
Tell us.
I love grits.
Okay.
I love my shrimp and grits.
Okay, nice.
That's something we cook here at home as well. Something I love that's soul food, Southern comfort food for me, but I can't eat it, is fried chicken. I love fried chicken. It just doesn't love me.
So we have fried chicken, and I tell my African American patients, stick it in the oven, it tastes just as good. They don't believe me. So now that we have air fryers, they can stick it in there and it can come out kind of fried. It feels like it's fried. They tell me it tastes like it's fried. In the Jamaican culture, we do that, and then we cook it down and make a gravy, and it's delicious. So gravy is a big part of the culture, right? My favorite thing actually in their culture is the ribs and the collard greens. Give me those collard greens.
Give me the ribs.
So, all the pork ribs, the spare ribs, the brisket, they have a way of preparing it that's just delicious. You know, they do their barbecue. It's delicious. Have you ever had any barbecue on the side of the street from the African Americans? They're delicious, right? And then there's the cornbread.
Cornbread.
And,
I love cornbread.
They make a nice mac and cheese, you know. So it's interesting because in Christmas, at Christmas for our office party, we had stopped doing parties because of the COVID, but we hadn't seen each other in such a long time that we decided to have a picnic instead of our usual big Christmas dress up party. So we went to a park, went to Tropical Park, and the boss said, let's get some Southern food. So we actually looked, we found a African American chef who caters, and I looked everywhere, but it didn't seem authentic. I finally found this wonderful chef, Smokehouse Ribs. Shout out to Smokehouse Ribs. And we ordered from him. He catered, so we had the ribs, barbecue, pork ribs, baby backs, brisket, chicken, corn on the cob, collard greens, beans,
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Wow.
and cornbread. And it was phenomenal, finger licking good. So those are comfort foods. When you get food from our African Americans, you feel comforted, and it makes me think that in their history, these kinds of foods brought comfort to them. It's a way of community. All of us today seem to build community around food. The Baptists are known for their potluck meals, and the Catholics are known for their potluck meals. And many religions, many denominations are known for gathering around food and what it brings to the community. It's comfort.
Do they consider seafood soul food as well?
Good question. So if we go to New Orleans, you're going to get a lot of seafood, and it's done with that Cajun touch to it, which I think brings the French influence into New Orleans, and the food there is so delicious. If you've ever been to New Orleans, their
I've been
shrimp
to
is
New Orleans.
so delicious.
Their gumbo? Is it
Gumbo, their
Oh, yeah,
seafood
gumbo's
gumbo.
so good.
So these are some of the things down south that are part of the cuisine, not necessarily in Miami.
And the fried
Florida.
catfish.
Uh-huh.
Fried catfish.
All of that. I think the thing in Miami is that everything is mixed with a little Spanish to it. So when we put it all together, we're this wonderful conglomerate of comfort food. You know, anything else stands out in the culture that we want to highlight today?
Well, I wanted to share because, I talk about soul food, I talk about Southern food and comfort food. And while it kind of is in the same family, it's actually, there are differences within it. Because not all Southern food is soul food, and not all soul food is Southern
Right.
food. And then I think the other type of food to consider are and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, the gullah.
Yes. Oh,
May I
yes.
ask what that is?
Tell us. Do you know about the
So
gullah?
from gullah, so I know, I learned a lot about Southern Carolina culinary gullah. That is when I've been in Charleston,
Yes.
you can definitely have that there. So, just to share a little bit about it. So the South Carolina Low Country is part of what's known as the Gullah Corridor. It is a strip of coastline stretching from North Carolina to Florida. And along this strip, enslaved Africans worked on isolated coastal plantations where they managed to retain some of their native cooking traditions. And so that's where it comes from. And a lot of the Gullah culinary influence is now really having, I think, a resurgence, and more people are learning about it.
But the food itself, what is it? The meat, what is it? What exactly is it?
So here, for example, they garlic crabs.
Oh, okay.
So we've talked about collard greens. We've talked about gumbo. Gumbo has okra.
Yes.
So okra soup, red rice.
Red rice.
Yeah. So there's a lot of, when you look at Southern food, there is a lot of the same influences, but there is a bit of a distinction.
Yes, we had the privilege on one of those secret getaways to go and visit where the Gullah tribes began, and And we see the old relics of slavery and churches and hear about the Gullah history, and you can buy food there and eat and stuff like that. It was a wonderful trip when we did that. But there's so much culture, so much richness.
Yes.
And
that
there's the
comes
biscuit
from
and the gravy.
Oh,
that is
yes.
I love biscuits and gravy.
Yes, delicious.
That's when we talk about like an indulgence and then having to work out.
Yes.
My son and I, we dig in some biscuits and gravy.
Yes. So we don't mean to make you all hungry, but we just want to celebrate some of these rich parts of our culture. And, I'm sure we're leaving out some important things. And if you think of anything, please put it in the chat so we can talk about that another time.
So maybe one day we could have like
Yes.
a cookout.
Yeah, maybe we should do that. Yeah. Maybe we should do that. We could get my wonderful chef to cook for us. We could actually bring him on the podcast if you want. And he could cook for us and we could enjoy some of that good food. And with that, this warm feeling of Black history and celebrating our African American brothers and sisters, we say good night. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always,
well, just want to remind you, March 18th, we've got the Global Women Enrichment Conference coming up. So remember to visit our website at gwenrichment.com. Look for the event details there, and we look forward to seeing you soon.